constant, like, as you keep going and moving further and further, it's like this constant battle. You have to be like, okay, I have to be prepared or else I'm going to get taken out.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally. Like, the enemy just tries to disqualify you in every single way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where he's like, oh, you're too young. Oh, you're by yourself. You're lonely.
Yeah.
Oh, like, were you even called? Like, doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, in just so many ways, like, the enemy tries to disqualify people.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome
Hi,
back.
everyone.
Oh. Welcome back to the YWAM Kansas City podcast. Today, you're hanging with the intern girls. We're all in the Messenger's Internship, and we are just going to introduce ourselves and share our stories. We have a few notes for today, but it's really just going to be us hanging out and talking. So I'll introduce myself first, then you go. My name is Mary Jen. I'm from Roanoke, Virginia, and I did my DTS in Kona in 2019, so I've been in YWAM for like a year and a half or something.
I am Desi. I'm from Kalispell, Montana, and I did my DTS in Kona, Hawaii as well back in 2018. And then I staffed for a couple of years, and now we're here, and we'll get into that later.
Yep. And I'm Shivani, and I'm originally from India, so I was adopted from India, so I grew up in Washington State. The most Americanized Indian you'll probably ever meet. I tell everyone that, just so you know.
Can confirm.
But I also did my DTS in Kona, and that was in 2017. So, yeah, it's been great.
Awesome.
Cool.
So we'll start, we're just going to talk about our journeys of like how we ended up in this messenger internship, where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. So we'll start with Desi. A little bit of background on our team. We have a team of 7 of us that are committed to going back to the Philippines. We've all been there at some point or another, some longer than others. So there's 6 marrieds on our team, so there's 3 couples, and then Desi is the only single. So we're gonna just ask Desi's perspective is like, what is it like being the only single like on our team, and challenges and pros of that. So
it's been an interesting time here in Kansas City. As you guys know, it's been just a lot of spiritual warfare, a lot of just rooting and grounding myself in who God is, really. And I think that that's a thing that I always go back to whenever I have a hard time, is just the word of the Lord over my life, and just knowing that, like, this is worth it, and that this is just really a time to just sow in kind of to everything that God has for me. And so I'll kind of give my story, kind of how I got here. And so that started back in 2019, I think, when I was in Kona, Hawaii, staffing a DTS, my first DTS, actually. I was 19 years old, pretty crazy. And then, the Lord really put the Philippines on my heart, and that's where I led a team to. It was my first time, like, ever leading a team of young people. It was a very big challenge. But when I got there, I just absolutely fell in love with the country, and God just broke my heart, for the nation. And Shiv was also kind of a part of that.
Yeah, that's where we met. Yeah, first time.
I remember I was preaching at a church, and then Shiv gave her testimony after that, and we were in a jeepney, which is kind of a vehicle in the Philippines, transportation. And she was like, hey, like, you should stay here. And she didn't even know that I was like already kind of like thinking about that before. The Lord kind of had spoken to me a little bit during the outreach about staying there. And it was just like kind of like this juggle of, should I stay here? Because like I don't have like all my things, like, you know, like it was kind of just like an awkward time. And also I had another year commitment with the DTS, Discipleship Training School I was staffing. And so, it was just like a little bit of a process of like asking God what I should do, and just felt peace about going back to Kona, staffing my last year. And then, a little bit later into that year, God spoke to me out of the blue. Like, he's like, I want you to stay there this time. And I was like, whoa, like what? Like that's all he said. He didn't say anything else. He's like, I want you to stay there this time. And it was kind of like this wrestle. I was like what about, I was like worrying about the details and stuff.
Right.
So yeah, it was just a lot of like surrender to the Lord. And yeah, later on we figured out that we would be going to the Philippines. So I was supposed to lead another team to the Philippines in March of 2020. And as we know, something kind of happened,
Yeah.
We kind of got into
Global
a pandemic. Fun stuff.
Classic.
So that door was kind of closed, and
I was just getting ready.
Am I supposed to be married?
I'm just kidding. We hate these things.
throw it out. No. So yeah, global pandemic, pretty crazy. I was like, okay, God, like you told me that I was gonna stay here. Like, what's going on? And so that was kind of crazy. Our school kind of ended up deciding that going on outreach wasn't the best thing. So we ended up sending all our students home to kind of like reach their hometowns, their cities and stuff. I ended up going to my friend's house in St. Louis because I just felt like the Lord just told me to go there. I didn't really know why. But I was like, okay, God. And then later on, the base leader from the Philippines, she texted me and kind of like threw out this opportunity of coming here to Kansas City with 6 couples, or 6
married people.
6 married people
About to be married.
About to be married. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I'll be the only single one. Like, okay. But yeah, I just spent like a couple days praying about that, and just got like total confirmation from the Lord to go.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, this is like the perfect place, total preparation stuff. Thought I was signing up for 6 months. Came here, it turned out to be a lot longer than 6 months. But yeah, I think the process of being here and being a single person kind of in the team has been definitely a challenge, like I said in the beginning. And just like a lot of lies and attacks from the enemy, just about like loneliness and being kind of like the outcast and stuff. But yeah, like I said, I just always kept on holding onto the word of the Lord for me being here, and just really feeling like this is a time where I can just go deeper with him, in relationship with him. And yeah, I know that this is just like such an awesome time that's set apart to just prepare. So when we do go back to the Philippines, we're going to be fully prepared. So yeah, I think that's kind of my perspective of it.
Good.
It's been hard. It's been a lot of, like fighting for the truth, definitely. But it's been so worth it, and I wouldn't like take back anything.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So Shiv, I want to kind of ask you, because I know that you were in the Philippines before. You're kind of there for a while. Like I said, when I met you there, you're kind of there staffing.
Yeah.
And just wanted to like hear your perspective of like how it's been like coming from like the Philippines and like being here, and like how like you feel like this time has really prepared you, and like do you feel like more like equipped to like go back? And just
Yeah, so when I first moved to the Philippines, it was in 2018, and I had actually been leading a team there from Kona, just a DTS outreach team with YWAM, and the Lord had specifically spoken to me 7 months before, and he's like, I'm going to ask you to move to a nation soon. And so I'm thinking like years in advance, right? And so I get to the Philippines, and there's just like so many words, so many dreams, and the Lord was like, stay. And similar to you, Desi, like nothing past that. It was just like, I want you to stay in the Philippines. I remember just being like, okay, Lord, and do what? Because like I'm single at that time, and my team would be leaving me, and I didn't really know anyone else on base. And at the time, the base was quite small, still developing. And so I'm thinking like, okay, Lord, what am I gonna do as a single person, move to the Philippines all by myself? And so of course the time comes around, my team leaves. And I was just like, okay, I have to stay. There's no way I can disobey the Lord. And I know that if I leave, there's no way I'm coming back. So I stay in the Philippines. And it was just this wrestle of just being like, did I really hear God. Like, is this actually from the Lord, or was this something just crazy that I thought up of my own? And it was definitely a while of me just like really doubting if I even heard the Lord. But then the longer I stayed there, the more I realized, no, like God actually has called me here. And my heart really is to go back to India. Like I was saying earlier, I'm adopted from India. Yep. And just the healing process the Lord has brought me on of just wanting to go back to my own country and minister there. So I was kind of confused when the Lord told me to stay in the Philippines, because I'm like, that's not really like what my heart burns for. But okay, Lord, like I'll just stay. Yeah. And of course, that's where I met my husband. He was already a staff there, and we just got to know each other. And sometimes I think the Lord asked me to move there just so I would meet him and we could get married. But I definitely think there is this preparation that the Lord has done in my heart, and in his heart especially as well. And this preparation that I wouldn't have gotten if I hadn't stayed, of just like, this is what it looks like to be fully dive into the field and like be uncomfortable constantly, like not have your family, you know, even a phone call away, because it was like this time difference, you know, they're sleeping when you're awake. And so it was just like completely uprooted from my comfort zone, from everything I knew, and just like this journey of faith of like, okay, Lord, putting everything on the line, like risking it all, what are you going to do with it? And so, of course, through a series of time, my husband and I got engaged, and we were actually on our way to get married in the beginning of 2020. Yep. I was like, when did the pandemic start? Feels like forever.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah. So, beginning of 2020, we're heading home to get married. And then Tommy and Claudia, we're the base leaders of the Philippines, asked us to come to this internship in Kansas City. And we're like, you know what? Why not? And I had kind of felt from the Lord that we weren't going to come to the Philippines right away, but I just didn't know why we wouldn't. And so it just seemed like the most perfect opportunity to be like, all right, Lord, like committing this much more of my time to get prepared, get the training I need, and especially being on the field and recognizing like, we can go and do all this ministry and evangelism, but what happens after we leave? That was always my question, is like, who is reaching out to these people after I leave? And like after you have this nice like compassion ministry, or even like this altar call moment, these people all go back to their homes or wherever they're from. And my question was always like, but what happens to them after that? Like, of course you can keep like preaching and going around the entire Philippines, but like what happens after? What's the follow-up look like? And so really coming to this internship has answered that question of like, wow, we can do ministry in a way that is actually like not only transformational, but it's also sustainable, and you can do it in such a way that there's good follow-up, and you can train people to keep following up with these people, and then training them how to make them disciples and then disciple other people. And it's this multiplication work where the Holy Spirit can just keep moving, and it doesn't just stop after you leave. And so that was really my heart, is to be like, we need to keep reaching out to these people, and these people need discipleship. And being here, I feel like just getting even that deeper training of what it looks like to go do something and not just blindly do it, but actually have a plan, have a strategy, and do it in the most effective way, you know?
That's so good.
So that's kind of a little bit of my story of how I got here in the process of just being here. But it's been amazing. And just to affirm, Desi, like, I can imagine our team without you. You lead us in so many ways. But it's been great.
Yeah, it's good. I totally know what you mean, though. Like, when I was, like, when God called me to the Philippines, I was like, okay, but, like, why are you calling me there? Like, what's the point of, like, just another, like, missionary, like, going there? And, like, when he called me there, I didn't even know like what I'd be doing. I'm like, okay, like I'll go, but like I guess I'll just like go to the YWAM base and like staff with everyone. But I think like being here in the internship, really like understanding like what we're doing and like getting like a plan, and just like understanding that we're shooting for something that's like long term. Like we want something sustainable. We want to, you know, not just like go and like preach a gospel and like see salvations, but we want to see like multiplication. We want to see like, we want to teach people how to preach a gospel to people and like create like this form of discipleship and stuff. So yeah, I think that's really good, Shiv. I like that.
And knowing that like the lies don't stop. Like even if you're called, you're still battling like, oh, am I even qualified for this? Or like, did God actually say this? And it's just like, the battle is real. Like, the warfare doesn't stop. It's like this constant, like, as you keep going and moving further and further, it's like this constant battle. You have to be like, okay, I have to be prepared or else I'm going to get taken out. You know?
Totally. Like, the enemy just tries to disqualify you in every single way. Where he's like, oh, you're too young. Oh, you're by yourself. You're lonely. Oh, like, were you even called? Like, doubt. In just so many ways, like, the enemy tries to disqualify people.
I think that's also, like, a big thing that we've been learning, like, here in the internship, is that what we're actually preparing for is, like, war. Like, we're not just, like, it's not just, like, this fun idea to, like, go to the mission field and to, like, preach the gospel. Like, we're actually, like, preparing for war. Like, it's kind of crazy if you think about it. Like, we're literally, like kind of, like, marching, like, into, like, this battlefield. Which is, like, it's kind of, like, scary to think about, but also, like, what a perfect time, like, we have.
For such a time as this.
For such a time as this, you know, to, like, prepare for war.
I
think,
good. Even, like, in the pandemic, I think we've all kind of felt this kind of, like, retreating, like, okay, like, this is what's going on in the world, and we need to, like, go back, like, rally up the troops and, like, see, like, okay, what are we actually going to do about this? What are we actually going to do about the evil in the world, the injustice, the, like, the everything?
But what I really love about that too is, like, you're not only gathering this army, but you're training them and then deploying them. So it's like how the West Point world works. Like, they have a plan, they have a blueprint of what they're doing. It's not just them landing on the ground and not knowing what to do. You know, they land on the ground running and they know what they're doing and what they're going after. So it's been so good.
Really good. Mary Jen, I would love to hear your perspective kind of on how this has been for you, because I know that you are, like, the youngest one. So how has that kind of been? Like, has the enemy, like, kind of, like, told you any lies, like, about feeling disqualified? Because I know that's a very common thing, is the enemy, you know, tries to lie about that we aren't qualified because of our age. Or,
Totally. I feel like it's not so much, like, disqualifying me, but feeling like I'm missing out of something, because all of my friends that I, like, graduated with, I graduated in 2019, so all my friends I graduated with, like, went to college, and they're, like, you know, like, living with all their roommates and, like, going to school and all that stuff. It's just so different than, like, where I'm at right now. So that's what I felt more. It's like, oh, like, am I missing out on something by not taking that, like, conventional road?
Right.
And like, even getting married at 19, where where the enemy tries to lie to me, like, oh, like, you're missing out on this because, like, you got married so young. You're missing out on, like, your single years, which is, like, that, like, what does that even mean, you know? But I was, like, dead set on going to college, and I think in the back of my mind I knew that wasn't gonna happen. But I was, like, because all my friends were, I was like, okay, I need, like, a plan to, like, tell people when they ask me where I'm going to college. And I was set on, like, studying. I picked a college, Appalachian State, with a major of sustainable development, and then I would do, like, a concentration on, like, nonprofits and poverty alleviation. So that was, like, what my heart was burning for at my school. I'd, like, spent a year studying that and wrote, like, my senior thesis on that and everything, and, like, never got tired of it. And that's, like, what I wanted to do after I graduate, like, similar thing, like, move overseas, like, do compassion work and that kind of thing. But then the Lord spoke to me about, like, it's actually so much bigger than that. Like, you need to zoom out, because I want to teach you how to, like, create sustainable revival. I don't want you to just, like, develop worldly things, but I want to, like, see sustainable, like, spiritual movements of the Holy Spirit. So that was, like, how the Lord spoke to me, and then that's how I ended up not going to college. And then I went to the Philippines and just got so, like, sold out for that nation. I fell in love with my husband there, because we were there together. And then came back, went to Rwanda, then had to come home because of the pandemic. And then now I'm here. So, which is kind of like just a faith journey where it was like, oh, like, this is something that, like, could be good or it could be, like, really random. But, like, we had no idea what we were coming into.
Yeah.
Our friends were just like, oh, like, this guy's great. Go get trained by this base. And we were like, okay. There's, like, nothing else to do. But, like, even just in that, like, blind, like, following the Lord, there's so much, like, that we've learned where we aren't just, like, wandering around, like, wondering what to do, but we're, like, back to, like, the army. We're, like, filled with purpose when we get on the ground. And, like, we're filled with purpose now.
Yep.
So that was kind of my journey.
Yeah.
That's so good.
That's so good.
So I think next we want to talk about a little bit about what community looks like. For us and our team of 7, like, on the entire base, community, like, outside of the YWAM world. Because it's just funny because we, like, all live in the same building, so we are not more than a 30-second walk from each other, which is funny. So it is, like, such intense community, but it, like, there's so much growing and, like, changing that happens in that. So do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, for me, I think community is so important. Like, you constantly have to surround yourself with people who believe in you, not only for what you're doing, but also just, like, there's this championship and this trust that's built that, like, you know that when you're down, you have someone that's going to pick you back up. I mean, of course, now that I'm married, I have my husband for that, but even outside of that, like, together as a couple, we know that we have this community around us that we, like, believes in us and, like, reminds us why we're here, reminds us why we're called, but also somebody that we can pour into as well and reach out to as well. And it's like this unity that God always intended to happen. And I feel like we've really found that in this community of just being surrounded with such, like, loving and caring people. And I feel like you don't find that very often. Like, you don't find a community that really, like, challenges you, supports you, calls you higher. And I feel like it's, like, there's so much value in it and being here, and, like, we've grown so much more because of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think the most important part of community also is kind of always coming around, like, one thing, which is, like, God, and always, like, rooting everything that we do in, like, you know, the power of the Holy Spirit. And I think, like, that's something that our community does really well. And obviously we're always still growing. There's always, you know, things that we can do more, but I think the main thing is always, like, coming back to Jesus and like how good he is, and just I think that has been really good. And also that we all kind of have the same heart to go back to the Philippines is super key also.
Like, just unifying.
Like unity. So that has been, like, really important, I think, in this community, is just always, like, going back to the Father and, like, gazing on him. And
I just want to encourage anyone watching this, like, you don't have to, like, be living on a YWAM base to have community. You don't have to be like at college living in a dorm with all your friends to have community. Like, that's something that we're called to cultivate. And like, sometimes we'll come into a place where it's like, oh, this great community already exists, but that's also what we're called to. And you can't, like, like we were talking about before, you can't disqualify yourself because you're like, oh, like, I don't live on a YWAM base, so I don't have community, or I just moved to a new place, I don't know anyone, so I don't have community. But that's something you, like, by full faith, that you have to step out in and, like, really cultivate that, like, vertical unity between you and God. And then that creates, like, horizontal unity between you and everyone else has that vertical unity with God.
That's so good.
And you're almost, like, leading other people into that, like, intimacy with the Father. And it's like any other normal relationship. Like, if you're gonna have a friendship, you have to sow into it, you have to pursue it. And so it's like, it's really this thing that you do have to go after and you do have to cultivate, or else you're not gonna have it. And
That's so good.
Community. And so we're just going to talk, like, about a few things that we do to cultivate community in our team on our YWAM base. For example, for our Philippines team, we do family nights every week, and it looks like different things every time. Like, last night was our family night, but we like a family in Kansas City invited us to their house. So like that was our family night, and then we had like a few other people in on that. But sometimes it's just like worship time for us to come together. And it's so important to like have that outside of, obviously we're together all the time, we like work together, learn together, but to like take time outside of like the required things to like really dive into community.
So good.
It's really good.
And one other thing I would say about like our internship that I didn't expect at all, I thought, you know, like, okay, it's an internship, we're gonna be sitting in class, like have our little office time and then go home and that's it. But I was like shocked at how holistic like the content of the internship and the schedule of the internship is, and like everything. Even just right before this, well, I was expecting to like learn, okay, we're gonna learn like strategy for the Philippines, that kind of thing, which we do. But then right before this, we were like leading a prayer set. And like a few months ago, none of us knew how to play instruments. I think one of us had like sang in front of people before. But now we're over there in the prayer, we're leading a whole prayer set.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought? For real. But yeah, just like how holistic it is. Like that. It really is a combination of like your spiritual development, your relationship with the Lord, but also like really going after the things that the Lord wants, like outside of yourself. And like really going after transformation, going after going after nations, really.
I think something that you said in the beginning of the internship, Mary Jen, that really stuck out to me was you get as much as you put in. And you know, we have like this schedule that kind of like gives us room to really invest in our time, but we do have times where we like have time to do stuff, but like what are you going to do with that time?
For sure.
How are you going to invest with that? And I know for me, a lot of the times I like to chill by like watching like a movie or something, or like a show. But even since I've been here, I've been like so like God has put on my heart to like do other things and like use like I could be doing other things with that time that really like pours into like my relationship with Him. So I think that's something that like will be good for when we go back to the Philippines, or even like for like people like, you know, at home, to just like be a good like steward of your time. Because we don't have like a ton of time on this earth, like how are we going to invest that?
And I think as leaders, like we have to model that first.
Absolutely.
And draw others into it. So that's so good.
If you guys don't have anything else, you can wrap up. Just like a little recap of what we've talked about. We kind of shared our own stories of like we talked about how we were called, and then like the biggest thing is like right after we were called, right after the Lord spoke to us, the enemy like came flying at us with lies and distractions and loneliness and all that kind of thing. But I think like the biggest thing that we want you to know is like you cannot disqualify yourself. Like nothing, like because you have been called, and even if you don't feel like you've been called, you have been called. And He, like God qualifies you in every way simply because you are His child. And you like the biggest thing is like stay strong. You can't like disqualify yourself because you feel this or the enemy is telling you this. And like even for like missions, for community, you just can't disqualify yourself in any way. And I think that's all we have for today.
So bye.
Peace out.